Hello, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying PyCon Czech so far. I hope you all had a good lunch. This is my first time at PyCon Czech, and it's actually my first time in Prague, and it's also my first time ever keynoting a conference, so I'm super excited that I get to be here and speak to you today. Thank you so much to all of you for being here and joining me for my talk. Before I begin, I would like to give a big shout out to the organizers who were wonderful to work with and who invited me to be here today. And I especially want to highlight the financial aid program. It's due to this program that myself and many other speakers can be here. So thank you. Yeah, give them a hand. Peter already introduced me a little bit. I just want to follow up on that a little bit. I'm Anna. I'm from Germany. I have a degree in English and Catholic theology. As you may see William Shakespeare and Pope Francis here on my slide. And I'm highlighting this because I want to stress that there's many ways to get into technology. You don't necessarily have to have a computer science degree in order to make it into tech. So I actually had the ambition to become a teacher. I finished my bachelor's degree, and then I somehow ended up in tech. I started teaching myself Python 3 years ago through the help of a friend. Originally with the intention to become a software engineer, but at one point I noticed that I also really like people, and that staring at a computer screen 8 hours a day probably isn't my thing, but I still really like tech, so I currently work at the intersection of both as the community and operations manager of Django REST framework. And I'm also involved in a few other tech-related things in my free time. I'm PyCon US Open Spaces Chair, I'm DjangoCon US Diversity Chair, and I'm one of the leaders of the PyLadies remote group. And today I'm here to talk to you about becoming mentors and helping others succeed. And you may think that this is a little bit of a weird topic for a tech conference, but you'll see it'll all make sense in a couple of minutes, so please bear with me. Before I start, I would like to do an informal survey. Who of you have mentored someone? Yeah, that's a lot of you. That's awesome. And who of you have been mentored by someone? Okay, awesome, cool. So let's get started and take a look at what a mentor is. Like I said, I studied English. I love definitions. I love dictionary. So what did I do? I pulled up the dictionary and I looked up what the word mentor actually means. And the Merriam-Webster dictionary says that a mentor is someone who teaches or gives help and advice to a less experienced and often younger person, and that a mentor is a trusted counselor or guide. The definition was much longer. I shortened it because it wouldn't have all fit on this slide. And I don't think this definition is perfect, but it's certainly pretty okay. Mentoring doesn't always mean giving advice to a less experienced or younger person. You can be a mentor to someone who's more experienced or older than you are. Also, and we'll see more about that later. So before I prepared this talk, I asked on Twitter, what are the main questions that people have about mentorship? And one of those questions was this one: why do people need mentors? And when I read this question, I thought, it kind of startled me because I thought it should be clear to everyone why people need mentors, but maybe it's not. And so I thought I would take up this question in my talk and address it a little bit. So think of any situation where you learned something new, whether that was a new programming language or a new sport or a new instrument or a new hobby, a new other language, really anything new. There probably was a moment when you get stuck. And there suddenly is this big mountain in front of you and you have no idea how to overcome it. And it's a fact that when you learn something new, you will get stuck at some point. That's inevitable. And when you get stuck, you have two options. You can either give up or you can get help. And I want to stress that giving up is not failure. It's not something you should be ashamed of. Sometimes giving up is actually a really smart choice. But let's say you're learning this thing and you're really determined and you think you can make it, but there's this big mountain because you're stuck and you have no idea how to overcome that mountain, and that's where a mentor comes in. And remember that it takes a lot of time and effort and courage to reach out to someone and ask for help. I know it's not easy to ask for help, but asking for help is the beginning of a new success story, and it brings you one step closer to reaching your goal. So what's a mentor's job? A mentor's job is to lend a hand, be a guide, be an ally, help them climb the mountain, go on a mission with them, share your knowledge and help someone else succeed, help someone set and achieve career goals, make smart business decisions, overcome workplace challenges, learn new skills, or simply offer an outside perspective when someone's facing frustrations at work, for example. But why should you become a mentor? Why should you help someone? Why should you give your time to helping other people? To me, that answer is pretty obvious. I don't know about you, but I think that helping others is one of the best feelings in the world. When I started out in the Python community, there were a ton of people who stepped up and who helped me, and without them, I certainly wouldn't be standing here today. And if you think of your own story, there were people who helped you. You might have not called them your mentors, they might not have called themselves mentors, but secretly they were. So if you've received help or mentorship, you should consider paying it forward. You should always give back at least as much as you have received. You may now think, okay, this all sounds cool, Anna, but really tell me, what's in it for me? Why should I become a mentor? Not only is mentoring super fun and rewarding, you'll also learn a ton, you'll gain great teaching skills, you will learn how to think from someone else's perspective, you will gain empathy and patience, and you will learn a ton of new things and insights from your mentee's questions, and you will understand things in different ways. And you'll be able to use these skills in other areas of your life as well. When you take the time to develop a strong mentorship relationship, you get access to a wealth of knowledge, but you also end up with a lifelong friend or maybe a future business partner. In short, there's no downside. It's really a two-way street. There's reciprocity there. You both have certain skills that you can offer to each other, and mentorship is a really incredibly fulfilling experience. And mentors learn at least as much as they teach. And if you think about it from an open source perspective, we can only really make open source sustainable if we have successors who will one day take a step up and do the work that we're doing. If you are an open source maintainer, then you maybe have noticed that maintaining an open source project on your own really isn't very sustainable. You need a break sometimes, or you're overwhelmed, there's too much work to do. So I think the future of open source is mentoring others and helping them learn those skills so they can step up and help out as well. Okay. There are a few big myths about mentorship. These are usually the things that people mention when I ask them to be mentors, and they take those reasons to tell me they can't. So I want to get this out of the way. The biggest myth is that you have to be an expert in order to be a good mentor. Who of you thinks that? Okay. This myth is not true. You don't have to be an expert. Oftentimes, it's really enough to have gone through the same struggles as the person that you're mentoring. So I'll give you an example. I started learning English in 5th grade in high school. In 7th or 8th grade, I would spend my free time earning a little bit of money on the side by tutoring younger students. So I was only 2 or 3 years advanced. Was I really significantly more experienced than those younger kids were? I wasn't, but I had gone through the same struggles, and therefore I could understand what they were going through. And I've been tutoring students for over 10 years now, and in the meantime, I've done, I think, 10 years of high school English, an English degree, a high school exchange here in the United States, and I'm by no means an English expert, but being more experienced also means being further away from people's struggles, so it's sometimes harder for me to understand why they don't understand that grammar thing they're struggling with. If you're a more experienced software engineer, you might have ran into the same issue, that you have a junior developer or a beginner sitting in front of you, and you don't quite understand what they're struggling with, because to you it totally makes sense. but you can still help them. It just will take you a little bit more effort to try and think from their perspective. Another myth is that only in-person mentoring is good mentoring. And that's not true either. You don't have to live in the same city and meet at the same coffee shop every week at the same time in order to have a good and successful relationship. Remote and online mentoring is just as effective. I'll give you another example. My friend Ian is one of my #1 mentors, and Ian lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and I live in Germany. So there's a 7-hour time difference, and there's also this huge physical distance. And we still make it work and meet every week for 1 hour online, or on every Wednesday. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Or I can also ping him in our Slack channel or an email anytime I need help when it's not a Wednesday. So in-person mentoring works great, but remote mentoring works just as well. Number 3 is that mentoring takes up a ton of time. That's usually the #1 reason people say they can't be mentors, because they feel like they don't have time. Who of you can spend an hour a week to help others? Pretty much all of you. So mentoring definitely is a time commitment, but it doesn't have to take up a ton of time, and it doesn't mean that you have to be available all the time. What has been effective for me is setting up this weekly office hour. Like I said, Ian and I meet every Wednesday. We created a Slack channel that just him and I have access to, and we chat for an hour in Slack. And we either use this time to work on projects together or for me to ask him questions, or sometimes we'll just talk like friends do about normal life stuff or career stuff, really anything. The advantage of that is that we both know that we have time on Wednesday at this exact time, and I also can pile up all my questions for him for Wednesday, and I don't feel the need to email him every single day, which is why people think that mentorship takes up a ton of time. It's just a matter of really good planning and organization. And the last myth is that only newbies need mentors. And this isn't true either. There is constantly something new to learn, especially in technology. You never know it all. Sometimes it's just good to get a second opinion on something. And as humans, we're never done with learning. We're always evolving, we're always learning something new. And even the most experienced professional doesn't know everything. Always play both roles. I sometimes run into people that are more experienced and they're ashamed to ask for help because they feel like they've reached a certain level and they should know it all. And that's not true at all. Even if you're more experienced, don't be ashamed to ask questions. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. That is totally okay. Ideally, you should never make the full transition from mentee to mentor. You can always be both. You can always teach others and learn from others at the same time. There's just one thing I wanted to stress because I think that people sometimes mix it up. There's a difference between a mentor and a tutor. A tutor is usually someone that you pay to help you improve your skills. Like I mentioned, I used to work as an English tutor for many years, and I would get paid to help my students improve their skills or do their homework or study for tests. Whereas a mentorship relationship is more of an informal relationship that both parties benefit from in different ways by learning from each other. It's usually not something that you pay someone for. It's all about learning from each other, supplementing skill gaps, helping each other learn, building relationships. And remember that it's supposed to be a fun growth experience. The key to success is simply defining that relationship from the beginning. Make it an open dialogue. Before you start mentoring, you should have a conversation, and you should determine 4 things. These are: what are your goals? What do you want to work on together? What will the time commitment be? And how are you going to communicate? These things can, of course, change over time, but it's important that you have that conversation in the beginning. I'll give you an example. So when Ian and I started working together, we determined that my goal was to learn about REST APIs at that point. And we decided to work on a project together and to actually work through the Django REST framework tutorial. We decided that the time commitment would be 1 hour a week, and we decided that we were going to communicate through Slack. Okay, now let's take a look at the mentorship do's and don'ts. What are things you should do as a mentor, and what are things you shouldn't do? Don't assume that you know how to help someone. Just ask them, how can I help you? Find out what kind of help your mentee needs. Do they want you to tell them the solution to a programming problem? Do they need hints or guidance? Do they maybe need an explanation? Do they just need reassurance? It's also important to not assume knowledge in certain areas. Instead, just ask, do you know this and this? This will not only make your mentee feel 100% more comfortable, this will also make your life a lot easier. Learn to ask the right questions and try to understand what exactly your mentee needs. Oftentimes, people feel really insecure to admit that they don't know something. If you think about yourself, admitting that you don't know something always makes people feel embarrassed. But if someone gives you the opportunity to say, I don't know, then you feel more comfortable about it. I'll give you a little bit of an example. So I attended a conference a few weeks ago, and there was one of the vendors that had like a giveaway thing where you would have to log into your GitHub account, and you would have to start the repository, and then you would get swag in return. And the person at the booth assumed that I don't have a GitHub account, which I actually do have a GitHub account, so it ended up being a little bit of an awkward situation. And instead, they could have just asked me, do you have a GitHub account? And I could have said yes, and then there would have been no awkwardness at all. Or I could have said no, and then they could have said, okay, do you want me to help you set one up? So you're kind of seeing what I'm aiming at. Just don't assume knowledge or skills in certain areas. Instead, just ask people. Which leads us to the next point. Show your flaws. Dethrone yourself. Show your mentee that you're a normal person too. In tech, we sometimes have the superstar culture. We hype people up, or there's people that do awesome things, and we think they're superstars. I had the same thing when I started out in tech. I was super scared to talk to certain people like Naomi Cedar or Lynn Root or other people that are sort of famous. But I noticed that they're awesome, but they're just normal and really kind and awesome people. So just dethrone yourself. Show people that you're just a normal person too, that you don't know it all, that you make mistakes too. People don't sympathize with perfect, they sympathize with flawed. When I started tutoring my English student, she would always ask me probably like 10 times in an hour, what does this and this word mean? And English actually has 4 times more vocabulary than German does. So there's no way I would know it all. So I would tell her, I don't know. And I would pull up my iPhone and I would pull up the dictionary and I would look up the word for her. And I did that on purpose because I wanted her to see that I'm not all-knowing, and I wanted her to show her what she can do in this case. In fact, by saying that you don't know something, you take a ton of pressure off of you because you don't feel like you have to be perfect. You may have heard the saying, the best teachers tell you where to look, but they don't tell you what to see. You don't have to know everything, you just have to know where to look it up or who to ask. And if you don't know something, maybe you know someone else who may know, and then you can connect the two people together so they can help each other. And it takes a while to get comfortable with someone. It takes a while to admit that you don't know something, but you can definitely get there. A mentor is someone with whom you should be able to let your guard down and ask the stupid questions that we all have sometimes. I found this commit strip comic in a book that was recently gifted to me, and I think it emphasizes what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit small here on the screen, so I will read it out loud for you. So the person on the left, in the top left corner, is saying, you know, there are some aha moments in the life of a coder when you suddenly understand something you totally didn't get before. And then the person on the right says, yeah. And then the person on the left says again, like when you find out that all IPs beginning with 192.168.xxx are local and has nothing to do with public IPs. And the person on the right says, haha, yeah. And then the person on the right says again, that brings back memories. I must have been no more than 12 years old. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. And then the person on the right says again, what about you? When did you find out? And the person on the left says, just now. Along with this comic, there was this quote by Solomon Hykes, who's the founder and CTO of Docker, and we can all like or hate Docker, but I really liked his quote a lot. So I decided to incorporate it into my talk. Again, I will read it out for you. And he says, "We're all someone's noob. I think we programmers have created a culture where you're supposed to know everything, and asking the wrong questions might make you look stupid. As a result, we ask less questions and spend too much energy trying to look knowledgeable instead of learning from each other. The best programmers I know say, 'I don't know,' all the time." Again, you can see it's okay to say, "I don't know." In fact, admitting that you don't know something actually saves you a lot of time and energy and spares you from getting stressed out. It's much better to say, "I don't know," and ask someone else for help instead of trying to figure something out on your own and spend hours and hours to find a solution, whereas asking someone else might have gotten you the solution within just a couple of minutes. There's no shame in asking for help and saying, "I don't know." As I said earlier, you should always see yourself as a mentor and as a mentee at the same time. Don't act like you know it all, because you don't. Ask questions. Remember that there are no stupid questions. Be open to learning from each other, and keep in mind that it's a two-way street. Figure out what you can teach each other and what you can learn from each other. Always listen. One of your main jobs as a mentor is to listen and to provide advice and encouragement, but in order to do so, you need to understand the situation first. Listen more than you speak. Figure out what kind of help your mentee needs. Figure out what they're struggling with. Sometimes your job will be to be a rubber duck. Who of you knows of the concept of rubber duck debugging? That's a lot, but there's still a couple of people who don't know about it, so I'll just briefly explain it. So the idea is that you have a little rubber duck sitting on your desk, and when you get stuck with a programming problem, you start explaining your problem to the rubber duck. And that may sound a little bit crazy, but it actually works. And one advantage is that the rubber duck can speak back to you. So you explain your problem to the rubber duck, and the idea is that by speaking your problem out loud, the solution will either pop into your mind, or you will at least be able to explain it more precisely. For example, when you want to Google something, you can't put a whole paragraph into Google. You kind of need to understand what you're looking for. And so maybe by explaining your problem to the rubber duck, you will be able to figure out what you want to put into Google, or what you want to ask a friend, or the solution just may pop up in your head. Sometimes vendors at conferences give out little rubber ducks, so if you see them, take one with you next time and put it on your desk. I promise it really works. And sometimes your mentee might not have a rubber duck, but you will be their rubber duck as a mentor, and you will just sit there and they will explain something to you. And maybe they will help themselves just by talking to you, or you may be able to help them from listening to them. Which leads us to the next point: be committed and available. And like I said, this doesn't mean that you have to be ready to answer someone's questions 24/7, but you should give them the feeling that you are available. Oftentimes that just means sitting next to someone. I've mentored a lot of Django Girls events, and a lot of times people just need you to sit next to them and reassure them that this is the right command they're typing into the command line. Or something like that. And I remember when I was in elementary school, my grandpa would often sit next to me when I did my homework. And he wouldn't really help me. He would just sit there and read the newspaper. And I didn't really need help. I just needed his presence and his reassurance to do my homework well. And sometimes that's all it will take for being a mentor, just sitting next to someone and reassuring someone. Mentorship is a commitment, but like I said, it doesn't have to take up a ton of time. It's totally up to you how much time you want to spend together. Your mentee should be the driving force, and you should be the passenger, and together you will decide where you want to go and how fast you want to go. Be patient, be open-minded, be kind. Don't get upset with your mentee if you have to explain something a couple of times. Different people need different kinds of explanations. When I started learning Python, I did the Code Academy Python tutorial, and there was a section in there about binary numbers. And I had never heard about binary numbers. I didn't know what they were, and I totally didn't understand binary numbers by reading the Code Academy tutorial. So I turned to a friend who was a software engineer, and he tried to explain the concept to me and he just couldn't explain it in a way that I understood it. And so at the end of the day, I felt bad because I felt like I had taken up his whole evening, and he felt bad because he felt like he had done a bad job explaining things to me. But really, I just needed a different explanation. So at the end of the evening, I turned to YouTube and I watched a 3-minute YouTube video, and it clicked and I understood binary numbers. And so you can see it wasn't that I was just plainly too stupid to understand the concept, and it wasn't that my friend did a bad job explaining it to me. It was just that I needed a different explanation. So if that happens to you as a mentor, then don't take it personally. Try to get someone else to explain something to your mentee, or try to find resources like a YouTube video or a book or different tutorials, something like that. It's not your fault. Also, take enough breaks, don't overdo it, and cut your mentee lots of slack. We're all just humans, not machines. Believe in your mentee and show them that you do. Always be positive and encouraging. Sometimes we need people to believe in us first before we believe in ourselves. Actually, if it hadn't been for a few good friends of mine believing in me to give a good first conference talk a couple of years ago, then I would have never gotten up on stage and I wouldn't be standing here today. Learning consists a lot of ups and downs. So as a mentor, it's your job to get your mentee through the downs and lift them up. Tell them repeatedly that they're doing great. Tell them to be kind to themselves. Also, this is really, really important. Words are powerful. Words can destroy a person's self-esteem and confidence totally. So make sure that you phrase things carefully. Apologize if you phrase something poorly. It happens to all of us that we sometimes say something that we didn't mean that way or didn't want to come out that way. Just apologize if that happens to you and try to do better next time. Never tell someone that they failed. Failure is a really strong and destructive word that we don't need to be using. And finally, don't touch your mentee's screen or keyboard. I see that happening all the time, that people go, oh, let me just type that in for you, because it's easier and quicker, and it's sometimes frustrating when you're trying to explain something and the person needs a little bit more time to get it done. But actually, that is how they will learn, and you don't want someone to leave fingerprints all over your screen or touch your keyboard, right? So please try and don't do that to someone else. There are certain tools that you can use when you mentor someone. Most of those will seem pretty basic, and they're all targeted at remote mentoring because that's what I've mostly been doing. But I just wanted to point them out just in case you're looking for some tools. Slack is a great communication tool for programming beginners. Setting up IRC can be really, really difficult. Slack is free, and we're all in 10 Slack channels anyway, so adding one more doesn't make that much of a difference. Email, a lot of people hate emails because we get so many of them, but if you just need a quick answer to a quick question, it can work really well. Skype or Google Hangouts work great for more personal communication or screen sharing. Cloud9 is a great online IDE. It's not the best IDE, but it lets you see the same code at the same time and work together, and you can see what the other person is doing. And Pastebin or Gist may sound trivial, but I know that when I started coding, I had no idea how to share my code other than taking a screenshot. So I think it's worth mentioning. This is just a small selection of tools. There's a whole bunch of other tools. Just figure out what works best for you. And besides these technical tools, there are a few non-technical tools or soft skills a mentor needs, like patience, a good attitude, a smile, friendliness, and empathy. You may not think this all sounds awesome. I really want to become a mentor, but maybe you don't know where you can help or how you can get involved. You can coach at a Django Girls workshop near you. Django Girls is a worldwide organization. They constantly have workshops going on. I think there was a Django Girls Prague too. And if you live in a city where there is no Django Girls event, you can just create your own. You could teach a class for the Pi Ladies. We welcome male teachers as well. You could help as a teaching assistant for a class. You could teach a class for your local Girl Develop It chapter. If you've given a conference talk before, you could become a speaker mentor. I know that conferences like DjangoCon or other conferences are looking for speaker mentors. Again, you don't have to be an expert. All it takes that you've given one talk. You can get involved with organizations like Code, Newbie, or Open Hatch. You can help out at local sprints and hackathons or user groups. You can become a mentor for Google Summer of Code or Outreachy. You could offer your help and advice to someone new at work, maybe a junior engineer or really anyone new. It's always good to know that there's a coworker willing to help and that you can ask questions. You could encourage someone to attend a conference or workshop with you. When you're new to programming, it can be really scary to attend those events on your own. You should just take someone by the hand and ask them to come with you. You could simply tweet that you're willing to help someone. Twitter actually works really great for finding mentors. Also watch out if people are having questions on Twitter and if you can help them. If you're an open source maintainer, you can create first-timers only issues on GitHub. These issues are not that hard to tackle. They explain in great detail what you expect to be done. And they offer mentorship, and they are targeted for people who have never made an open source contribution before. This is a great chance for people to get involved, and this is a great chance for you to help. After creating such an issue, you just assign the label first timers only to it so people can find it. Also, just put it in the README of the project that you're maintaining that mentorship is available and how people can reach out to you if they need help. These are just some ways you can help out. If none of those work for you, but you still would like to get involved, please find me after my talk, and I'm sure we'll find something. Some of you might not only seek to become mentors, they might actually be looking for a mentor. So how do you find a mentor? Mentors don't walk around with name tags that say mentor. A lot of times, people that mentor don't even call themselves mentors. I can only tell you how I found my mentors, and that was by chatting with people at conferences and just asking them, hey, if I have more questions about this topic, can I follow up with you? Can I email you later? Programmers are really passionate about what they do, so if you have someone who's really passionate about Django, they will be more than willing to help you afterwards. So don't be shy and just ask them. It's really good to approach people with a concrete question. Don't walk up to someone and ask them, hey, will you be my mentor? That can be kind of weird and it's not very productive. So figure out what you need help with and then find the right person to help you. At the end of my talk, I wanted to do a quick story time and share mentorship success stories. I didn't want to just stand here for 30 minutes and tell you all about how mentorship is awesome without actually proving that it works. So once upon a time, actually about a year ago, there was a young woman who had the dream of becoming a C Python core developer. She reached out to Guido van Rossum and Raymond Hettinger and others for mentorship. And she dedicated her time mostly contributing to the CPython documentation, and she created the CPython dev guide. And she recently became the first woman CPython core developer. This woman that I'm talking about is Maryada, and Maryada is really awesome. You should follow her on Twitter. Maryada also gave a really good talk about mentorship at PyCon this year, sharing her story and her tips. It's up on YouTube under this link. I will tweet out the link to my slides so you can find it later. So go and follow her on Twitter and watch her video. Please go and check it out. And once upon a time, actually a little bit about 2 years ago, there was another young woman who had the dream of speaking at conferences because she was actually really terrified of public speaking. She reached out to friends in the Python and Django communities, and with the help and encouragement of them, she has now given 12 conference talks, spoken on some panels, and given a few shorter lightning talks. And today, she's giving her first conference keynote, and if you haven't figured out, that young woman is me. So you can see it. So you can see it actually works. So who of you is going to become a mentor now? I hope that all of you will. One more thing, we're always looking for new PyLadies remote teachers. All of our classes are remote online screencasts. so you have no excuse why you can't do it. You can just sit at home and talk to your computer and teach a class for us. And if that's something you would like to do, go to our website. There's a link where you can email me or check us out on Twitter. We also have all of our resources from previous classes up on our website. They're great resources for teaching or learning yourself. And I also brought some stickers of our logo with me, and I have some PyLady stickers from PyCon with a cool rainbow design. So if you'd like a PyLady sticker, please come find me after my talk. I'd love to give you one. That's all I have for you today. I don't think I have much time for questions, and I actually prefer if you would find me in the hallway after my talk, or if you would tweet me. I'm at OSSAnna16 on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Again, enjoy the rest of PyCon Czech, enjoy beautiful Prague, and have an awesome day, and thank you so much for being here and listening to my talk.